And welcome back. As we go ahead and continue looking at how we can use arrays in programming, let's go ahead and bring up the topic of methods with a variable number of parameters. So let's take this back to this idea of overloading. If we recall this technique called overloading, this is when we have methods that may have, for example, the same name, but they might have a differing number of parameters or different types of parameters. So let's say, suppose we have a method named max that returns the largest of 2 int values, and you have another method named max that takes 3 int arguments and will return the largest of those 3. Now, if you decide you need a method that returns the largest of 4 integer values, well, we could define a version of the method max that takes 4 arguments. However, as you might start seeing with this approach, there's no way to cover all cases computing the maximum number of some number of int values. In fact, covering cases in this way would require an infinite number of definitions for the method named max, and no program has enough time to write an infinite number of definitions, so there has to be a better way of doing this. So what we really need is a single method definition for a method called max that can then take in any number of int arguments. Now notice I am saying int arguments here. If I were to change this to double, then we'd have to have a differing method for this. So let's first off by discussing our variable parameters. Java lets you define methods that take any number of arguments. The following is the definition method named max that would take any number of int arguments and return the largest of the arguments. So a public static int max int ... arg. If arg.length is equal to 0, we have a fatal error, maximum of 0 values, system exit. And then we say int largest is equal to argument of 0. For int I equals 1, I is less than argument.length, I++. If argument of I is greater than largest, we set largest equal to arg of I, and then we return the largest. So if we take a look at this method max, this works by taking its int arguments and placing them in an array named arg, whose base type is int. Suppose this definition that we're looking at is of the method max is in a class called utility class. And let's just say we have the following method called int highest score is equal to utility class dot max 3, 2, 5, 1. So how it's going to work is the array arg is automatically declared and initialized as follows. Int array arg is equal to 3, 2, 5, 1. So argument of 0 is 3, argument of 1 is 2, argument of 2 is 5, argument of 3 is 1. After all, the code in the body of the method definition is then executed. So we just run that method as we normally would. And you'll note that a method takes any number of arguments is basically a method that takes an array as an argument, because this is what this is kind of looking like. Oh, this looks very similar to when we statically define values in an array, except for the job of placing values in the array is done automatically for that of the programmer. The values for the array are then given as arguments, and Java automatically creates an array and places those arguments into it. This gets into the topic of var arg specifications. A parameter specification that specifies any number of parameters, such as int ... arg, is what's known as a var arg specification. Now, while it technically would make more sense to call it a var parameter specification, the word var arg is much more common usage. Now, when we're looking at the actual syntax here, the 3 dots in a var arg specification is an ellipsis. You'll note that the ellipsis here is actually part of the Java syntax, and it's not an abbreviation for anything. So when we say int ... this is actually something that Java sees and recognizes as, oh, you mean an ellipsis. So if we want to create an ellipsis, we just type those 3 dots. Now you can only have one variable parameter specification, such as int ... in a method definition. You can't start putting anything that you want into there. However, you may have any number of ordinary parameters, in which case var arg specification must be the last item on that parameter list. And now that we know about arrays, we can actually use this to construct our own methods with variable arguments. And so if we go here into the variable parameter demo, we can see we have a main class here that is calling the method max. And you can see max is set up right here. We have a public static int max, and then we have int ... arg. And you can see, of course, here is that if statement with the for loop that we had previously seen. And so if I go ahead and give this a quick run here, it's asking me to enter in 3 scores. So let's just say 50, 60, and how about 85? All right, so we get the highest score is 85. If I were to rerun it, let's just go ahead and now mix those scores up. So let's just say 60 85, and 50, we still get the highest score of 85. So the function is working correctly. We are, of course, are using this with this ... specification. And the thing is, we didn't know how big this is going to be. Yes, we knew we were taking in 3 inputs, but we didn't know necessarily here, according to the specification, how many that's going to be. So it gives us some flexibility. So if I were to come in here and let's just say add in one more score, so just say int score, and let's set that equal to kboard.nextInt, and I were to come up here and add in score, I do not need to change anything about this actual method that I'm using down here. In fact, I can just rerun it, and let's do again 60, 85, 50, and let's just say 71. We still get the highest score of 85. In fact, even if I rerun it with a new high score at the end, so 50, 85, 60, and let's say 87, we now get the high score 87. And notice, we didn't have to change anything about this method. Let's go ahead and take a look at one more here. This is a utility class here that just has 2 methods in it. We have a public static string censor, which is simply just removing all occurrences of a particular phrase. And this is removing, it says return sentence with all occurrences of the one on want to remove it. So this, of course, this delete one is something that's functioning here inside of this method. But let's go ahead and look at this in the demo here. If you notice in the demo, we're using this class and we're calling the censor method, and is looking to process out candy, french fries, salt, and Oreos. And then this one is going to process out any extra commas. All right. So it's going to ask us, what did you eat for dinner? So let's go ahead and just run this and make sure I run the correct program here. We want our string processing demo. So what did you eat for dinner? So let's just go ahead and say we had pizza, we had, how about, let's go ahead and put in ice cream, and let's put in Oreos, just because, why not? We love Oreos. And let's go ahead and enter. All right. Now notice, it said it would be healthier if you could answer pizza, ice cream, Oreos. One of the things it did do is that it did scrub out the commas from here. So those commas are now gone.